Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and this is a video about the Gamefound booth at Origins 2023. If you're not going to Origins, this video may not be as relevant past the opportunity to talk about 22 games that are pretty cool that will be at the booth. But if you are going to Origins, or if you're on the fence about going to Origins, this is a fun video to watch because this is an opportunity to see what you'll have an opportunity to play at the Gamefound booth at Origins. Also, by the way, for those of you attending Origins, there will be an opportunity to win an all-in pledge of the Witcher Old World. You'll have the opportunity to win one of those. We'll talk more about that later in this video. I'll have details down below, as well as, well, I may or may not have details down below. I don't know. We'll talk about it more about it later in the video, but there'll be an opportunity to win an all-in of the Witcher Old World from Go On Board. But with that, this is a video about the games that are going to be at the Gamefound booth at Origins 2023, June 21st to 25th in Columbus, Ohio. Also, full disclaimer, as usual, I work for Gamefound in addition to the whole entire YouTube channel that you regularly watch. I'm also CMO of Gamefound, so take that into account as you go through this. But this is not really a review, although I guess there's no review here, but I will likely be interspersing thoughts into things. But basically, Gamefound is running a booth at Origins. Gamefound is running a booth, and whether you are a creator, whether you are just someone who wants to play games, there's many reasons to stop by. Not just because you can win an all-in pledge of the Witcher Old World, but also because we're going to have 21 or 22 pretty amazing games that you can sit down and table throughout the convention. We're going to have a bunch of things set up. We're going to have games ready to go, games that you either may not have had access to because they're hard to get your hands on in general, and in some cases, games that legitimately you just cannot get your hands on right now. They don't exist outside of the fact that there's like a singular prototype or two floating around in the wilds. With that, let's go ahead and jump into the games. This video is going to be focusing on the games, just so you know what you'll have an opportunity to sit down and play. I'll say a few things before you get into the games, though. I mean, I already said a few things, but let's say a few more things before you get into the games. First of all, booth number is 1808. 1808 is going to be the booth number for the Gamefound booth at Origins. I'm sure you can find it many other ways, and also make sure to check schedules or the app or the site or all those things. Sometimes things do change, and on the off chance we're not at 1808, well, check and see, because we'll be around somewhere. It'll be a decently large booth. It should not be the hardest to find us. Additionally, I'll say that many of these games, while all these games will be set up throughout the convention at different points, because of the nature of how much table space we have versus how many games we brought, there might be some degree of rotation. So if you show up at the booth hoping to play one of these particular games, there's a chance it won't be set up at the time you go. I think at all times around 75% of these games will be set up, but that means you might have to stop by another time or check in when we'll have Planet Unknown ready to go or whatever else there is on the table. And then lastly, I'll say that the games, because of the nature of, well, how long some of these games can be, depending on how many people are present at any number of times, we may be limiting some access to, hey, you can sit down and play this game, but only for an hour, or only for half an hour, just depending on how busy the booth is. So in some cases, you'll be able to play full games, in some cases you may not. It's going to be a combination of how long that game actually is, as well as how busy the booth is at any given time, but you will be warned before you sit down and start that, hey, by the way, this table's only for an hour, this table's only for half an hour, etc. But just in case you're really expecting to sit down and play the entire, I don't know, what's the longest game we have here? Isofarian Guard. With Isofarian Guard, possibly the longest game, you will not be playing through a full entire game of Isofarian Guard, shockingly enough. In any case, with that, let's go ahead and start off with the games on the table. Let's start off with the Witcher Old World because it's already here. We have 22 games to go through, a whole lot of boxes. I have boxes for most of what I'm talking about today. Some of them are still waiting on them to arrive, so not fully there yet. But we have the Witcher Old World. This is a fantastic game that I've had the opportunity to play the original prototype. I have not played it since it arrived yet. I need to brush up on the rules because there'll be a bunch of people at the booth helping teach as much as possible. But it is worth noting, if you're really dead set on a game, coming in knowing the rules is better, by the way. First of all, it's better for you because you don't have to waste time being taught the rules at the convention. You can learn the rules whenever and then play it at the convention. It's also better because while we will have people throughout the convention knowing almost all these games at all times in a rotation, there's always a chance that at the time you show up, one of the people who knows that particular game isn't there, or alternatively, in some cases, like I know 90% of the games we're going to be covering at the convention that we're going to have there, but in some cases, I may not be as 100% up to date on the Witcher Old World newest rules, and I can give you a kind of loose, here's how you walk through it, but I might be missing that small detail here and there, so knowing the rules is helpful, not essential, but it might help you have a better experience, and again, save time on just not having to learn the rules. But this game, I played the prototype, I love it. It's basically, you can play it solo, cooperatively, but the main mode is a head-to-head competitive game, in which you'll be playing through the Witcher Old World, and you're going to be playing as a Witcher character or as a mage character as well. They have mages and witches in the game, and you're going to be wandering around the board trying to get your point track. I think it's like 4 points, whatever it is, if I recall correctly, while hunting down and taking down monsters, and occasionally tackling the other witches or mages in direct combat. You're going to have a sequence of adventures you're going through as you choose various narrative events, you know, in the city, out the city, and wandering around the board and engaging with the various characters and going from point to point, while also trying to take out the various monsters. This is, after all, a monster hunting game, and you will be taking down the monsters as you go. As far as how to win this game, by the way, I don't have the full details yet. It's likely going to be some form of, you know, sitting down and playing games will enter you into a win, or possibly signing up for things. I don't have the exact details of what you will need to do to be eligible to win the pledge, but we will figure it out, and we'll have that information at the show itself, and it is something that you will have to be at the show. Unfortunately, we don't have a way for it to be, you know, watching this video. It's going to be relevant to people who are at the show, stopping by the booth in some way, and then doing something, whether that's signing up for something, whether that's following a campaign, whether that's playing games. I don't have the exact details, but that's going to be, we'll figure that out at the convention itself. Past that, let's go ahead and dive into the roster of Awakened Realms titles, because we do have a bunch of Awakened Realms titles to go through. First of all, we should have Lords of Ragnarok, and I should say should. All of these do have slight asterisks for any games that don't show up or something happening, but these all should be there. But Lords of Ragnarok from Awakened Realms, this is the spiritual successor to Lords of Hellas, and this is an area control game that will play 4 to 5 players. This is one that, again, you probably shouldn't expect to play the full game, but you'll be able to play enough of it to get a good feel for how the game plays, as you try to accomplish quests, as you try to, you know, get control of various areas, get control over the temples, all while trying to, like, build up your units and engage in combat, gather more cards, gather those, like, little points that you have this ongoing tableau building that will give you these increasing benefits in the game, just making you more competitive in different ways, more aggressive, more defensive, getting points in different ways. Lords of Ragnarok is a strong area control game that plays incredibly well, and it just is a solid game. Again, another one that I've had a chance to play the prototype, have not dived into the final version. I have a lot of homework on me for, well, all the things I have to play, but that's Lords of Ragnarok. We'll also have Nemesis Lockdown, one of the few games from the 20 or so, 22-ish games that will be at Origins. I think I have not played, like, 2 of them, maybe? 2 or 3 of these games I have not played. We'll talk about which ones I have not played as we go through them, but Nemesis Lockdown is one of the only ones I have not played. Now, I have played the original Nemesis, not Nemesis Lockdown, and obviously Nemesis Retaliation is going to be the newest game coming out from Awakened Realms shortly, but we don't have the prototype for that yet, so instead we'll have Nemesis Lockdown. You'll have an opportunity to dive into that one, and of course we'll be talking about upcoming campaigns on the Gamefound platform as well, so you'll be able to see and follow various things, like in the case of, well, not The Witcher, but in the case of, you know, Lords of Ragnarok, well, actually not Lords of Ragnarok either. Some of these things are things that have been late pledged on the platform, or will be on the platform, or have been on the platform. But in the case of Nemesis Lockdown, obviously you'll have the opportunity to follow Nemesis Retaliation and to see more about that. But as far as games to play, you'll be able to play Nemesis Lockdown, the second of the series, as you try to wander through a spaceship, ultimately trying to survive without the aliens actually murdering you the entire time. Nemesis Retaliation actually sounds like the one that might be most up my alley personally, which just seems like that's the one where you might be most aggressively fighting back, which honestly is more my jam. Nemesis is a game that I've had mixed experiences on. I've had both incredible gameplays of it, and also mixed gameplays of it, and that's kind of been the thing that's been holding me back from actually heavily diving into Nemesis Lockdown. But maybe I'll play it there, because actually that would be a good opportunity to play it there. Although rulebooks, I need to read the rulebooks, because this is the one I'm least equipped to actually teach. Well, one of the 2 or 3 that I'm least equipped to actually teach you. From there, we have Castles of Burgundy. Now, this is one that I don't know for sure if we will or will not have at the show. I hope to have this one at the show, probably. I'll say there's a strong probability that this will be there, but this is the Castles of Burgundy from Awakened Realms. This is the reprint of the famous, you know, S.T.A.L.K.E.R game, all that stuff. A combination of Ravensburger and Awakened Realms, a cooperation of Ravensburger and Awakened Realms working together, and this one has just started to land finally. And so to that end, if you are someone who's, well, either interested in finding out more about the game or seeing the game, well, first of all, I just had an unboxing of the game go up this past week. I'll also have a video about the game itself, talking about, you know, do I feel it's worth it or necessary for someone who wants the game, because I've already had a chance to play it several times, and I definitely have thoughts and opinions around the game. But if you're interested in seeing what the table presence is like for yourself, if you're interested in seeing the Stefan Feld point salad Euro game with the deluxification of every single building turned into a 3D miniature that goes onto your board, if you want to see the full degree of what this game looks like and the table presence it has, and to get a feel for whether it actually is or isn't an improvement over the original, because there is an extra degree of maintenance for it when you try to play with those miniatures, well, we'll have it at the show, we'll probably have it at the show for you to be able to get a chance to sit down and play it. Maybe even finish it, depending. Again, some of this will depend on how crowded the booth is at any given time. And then one of the ones that's definitely very exciting is S.T.A.L.K.E.R the board game. will be at the convention as well. This is one of those I mentioned that is prototype only. You cannot get your hands on this outside of, well, I mean, a handful of copies that exist in the wild. And S.T.A.L.K.E.R the board game, I've had a chance to play through this one. You can check earlier this week, I just put out a first impressions video on this, but this is basically going to be giving you a journey into the S.T.A.L.K.E.R video game IP, but in board game form, as you manage a certain degree of stealth mechanics in the game, or noise-driven mechanics, where you try to be mindful of the noise you're creating while trying to wander around the board and take down the various enemies and engage with the story sequence that is in play. This is going to be an 8 to 12 hour campaign. There's also a one-shot mode where you can play through a 2 to 3 hour experience. In this case, this particular prototype has the first 2 journeys in there. We'll probably just have the first journey set up and give players the opportunity to dive into that. This is an interesting one because playtime in this does definitely vary. It's the kind of game where you can sit down for 2.5 hours playing through that first scenario if you're really thinking and taking your time, or if you're willing to just charge forward confidently, it's the kind of thing you can knock out in an hour or less. Whether you win or lose is a different conversation, but you could knock it out in an hour or less if you're being ambitious about it. From there, we have a lot of games on the table. I'm going to have to be pushing things off to the side as I manage it. But we should also have Guards of Atlantis II over on, well, I mean, I was going to say over on Gamefound, but it was on Gamefound. But Guards of Atlantis II, this was a game that was on Gamefound. They just had the reprint campaign. And we don't have any of the new characters and things, but we will have the original game for you to dive into. So you have the opportunity to sit down, to play through the game, to get a feel for the characters in this MOBA-driven game. This one over here is going to give you, well, we're going to have a bunch of characters, they're going to have the map set up, you're going to have to deal with the degree of teammate and cooperation stuff as far as how the game goes, in terms of working with your teammates to play cards and build and augment and develop your characters as you manage your heroes and manage the minions and ultimately try to drive your lane forward across the course of the game until either you actually win or alternatively you run out of the lane markers or kill enough heroes that ultimately you've taken down your opponents in this game. Guards of Atlantis 2, fantastic game. It is the kind of game you might be able to knock it out in an hour if you're being fairly aggressive, but you might have to deal with just managed wave counters or hero counters as far as managing the death in the game, but that's Guards of Atlantis 2. Then we have this one over here, if I can get my hands on it. Sorry, just too many boxes. We have Scarface 1920, in particular Bloody Business over here. Now, I'm not confident we'll have Bloody Business at the show. We'll definitely have Scarface at the show, that's for sure. We may have Bloody Business, we may not. That one we'll have to take a look and see. Bloody Business being the expansion, the new factions in the game, as well as some of the new mechanics at play. But Scarface 1920 is an area control, deck building. There's more terms than that. There's area control, deck building. There's another term for it. There's not term, there's another keyword that was there. Area control, deck building, and what? Tableau building? No, I can't remember what it was. But either way, in this game, you're going to be building out your deck to some small degree while you try to manage your various guns and drugs and all these various things to make you money in the game as you try to manage the various factions of the board, the various areas of the board that you're trying to take control over as you constantly wrestle control from your opponents as the buildings are built out and as you grow and develop your own faction with its asymmetric abilities, strong asymmetric abilities as you build out and improve your tableau. Lots of gun running and drug smuggling and all those fun things as you try to manage a faction, as you try to manage your mob in Chicago. I think it's in Chicago. I'm pretty sure it's Chicago. As you try to manage your mob in Chicago, as you try to figure out how much to inform on the cops or to possibly be arrested or to have various informants come in and have have a raid from the FBI showing up. Lots of things to manage in this game. Again, another one that I have not played. I actually just started reading through the rulebook of the final game, rereading because I've played the original prototype, have not played the original game, hoping to dive into that shortly because I should be covering Scarface 1920 Bloody Business for the campaign, and so I definitely want to make sure I'm up to date on the rules and learn all the new things and all that stuff. That's going to be Scarface 1920, which you can expect coverage on that one from me shortly, but also, again, the base game for sure, but possibly the expansion as well, will be at Origins 2023. And with that, we are nowhere near done. I'm sorry, this is going to be a longer video. We also have Coloma from Final Frontier Games. Now, this is another one I'll have to brush up on because I've played this game. I've played this game a bunch, but ultimately it's been like a year plus since I've played this. Have I ever reviewed it? I don't know if I ever reviewed this. Huh. Now I'm a little curious. I don't know if I ever reviewed Coloma. I'll have to take a look at that and see, because I think, if I recall correctly, I played Coloma when I first was getting into the whole YouTube space. And I believe I played it after I started doing YouTube videos, but I don't think I did it when it was my first year in YouTube. I didn't do as many reviews as I do nowadays. I actually shifted strongly away from them. I didn't want to review games. I wanted to just talk about board games, and over time that shifted into reviewing games because it just ended up happening. But I don't think I've ever reviewed Coloma, and now I kind of want to dive into it again and review it because it is a good game. It's a game I definitely enjoyed. Not a game that's stuck in my collection, but a game I definitely enjoyed from Johnny Pack Canton and from Final Frontier Games. And they're going to have the reprint campaign and expansion over on Gamefound shortly, and Coloma over here is going to be oh my gosh, there's a Rondell There's a degree of worker placement-ish in the game, but you're managing your rondels, you try to figure out your resources, build your various bridges, wander around the map in the upper left corner. I'm trying to just remember from the game. Again, I've played the game, I played the game a few times, but it's been a long enough time that I will have to refresh myself on the rules, or just check out somebody else who knows the rules, because I'll definitely be able to semi-help in the game, or even sit down and play. One of the things that's going to be fun about the booth is I'll be there a decent amount of the time, and I am not averse to sitting down and playing games. I say that now, and I'm realizing that there are other people at the booth who might be averse to me sitting down and playing games. So we'll see. Catch me early enough in the morning when things aren't busy yet. I mean, things are busy in the morning. Catch me at some point when things aren't busy, if things aren't busy, and maybe I'll sit down and play a game as well. I definitely want to. The only question is whether I get the stinky eye from other people at the booth, running the booth, while I sit down and just have fun instead. So we'll see. We'll see. I'd love to. I'll see what I can do. But Coloma from Final Frontier Games. We also have Raw from 20th Century Games. This is going to be the deluxe version of Raw, that deluxe goodness that Raw from 20th Century Games, they had a campaign for this over on Gamefound, and this is the Reina Knizia title with art by Ian O'Toole and glorious chunky little wooden pieces in the game. This is an easy one for me to teach and play. I've played this game a ton. I really enjoy this game. It's a lot. First of all, I enjoy Raw in general, but I enjoy this implementation of Raw as well. They made it incredibly clear as far as how and where the cards and tiles are going. Tiles, not cards. The tiles are going in the game to manage the multiple scoring mechanisms across the 3 ages of play. And Raw is a pure bidding game. Ultimately, this is a bidding game which you're trying to bid to get tiles and possibly to avoid tiles as you try to figure out the best way to use your tokens to possibly win up to 4 bids per round. I think it's 4 bids if I recall correctly. I know I just said I can teach it. It might take a second to refresh on 2 things. But either way, Raw's a fantastic auction game with a lot of push and pull around trying to push and pull against the other players, knowing when someone will and won't call you on something, trying to get a gauge of what's worth it for you versus what's worth it for others as you play through the game. A delightful experience, and then one that you can easily knock out in an hour too. I don't expect this table to be a time limited. It's a 30 to 60 minute game, and 30 might be pushing it a drop, but it is doable if you're playing with people who know what's up, but that's going to be Raw. Then we have Lands of Galzyr over here. This is, again, I think one of only, yeah, just looking through this, there's only 2 games on this table I have not played. Oh, there's a caveat there, because there are some games here. We'll talk about the next game in a second. Lands of Galzyr over here from Snowdale Design. This was another campaign. They're going to have they have this one campaign over on Gamefound. They actually have another campaign coming up shortly, but it's not going to be Lands of Galzyr. It's going to be Legends of Snowdale or something like that. I can't remember the exact name. Expedition Snowdale? No. They have another game coming up on Gamefound. We'll have links and QR codes and all those fun things at the booth so you can follow whatever you want. But they do have another campaign coming up. But Lands of Galzyr is a narrative exploratory game as you go through it. One that I have not played but really should dive into sooner rather than later because I do want to ultimately play this one. But this one over here is, what was I going to say? I was going to say something. Oh yeah, it's one of the only 2 games that I have not played, sort of 3 games. One of 3 games I have not played as we go through this. But this is one that you're going to have to come to the table with your own phone or system, whatever it is, to actually, you could log to the website. There's a degree of progression. There's a little app you're going to go through as far as managing the various narrative sequences. So you do have to have a phone to sit down and play this one. I don't believe we're providing technology because it's just so easily accessible on any device. That as long as you have your phone, Wi-Fi, which are both things that should be present at the convention, or LTE if you don't need Wi-Fi, whatever it is. But this is going to be set up over there. Another one you can dive into and get a sense for what this journey feels like, and one that I will hopefully know how to play by the time Origins pops around. My goal is to know all the games, to have a good enough understanding of all the games by the time Origins pops around. But we do have a bunch of other people at the booth, so if not me, there will be people who have your back covered. But again, knowing the game yourself will just save you time on a personal level. Before we dive into more boxes, let's talk about the 3 games that I don't have boxes for, because there are 3 games I don't have boxes for, because, well, we'll get into the why. The first is going to be Robomon. Robomon is one that I have not played as well. It's the 3rd game from all these 22 games or so that I have not personally played. But Robomon is going to be coming to you. That is going to be from S.T.A.L.K.E.R, and it's going to be a kind of Pokemon-adjacent collect-them-all series of a degree of narrative exploration. It's a solo, or I believe it's solo or 2-player, but a solo or 2-player game which you're going to be wandering around trying to collect your various Robomons instead of Pokemons. I have not played it. I can't talk extensively about it, but it was a campaign over on Gamefound. They just actually released an optional buy kind of thing for it. They just released a they had like this kind of Grandpa's Island Adventures or something. It's an extra way to dive into the game system. If you don't want the full Robomon adventure, but you want to get a sense for what the gameplay is like, they have that slightly cheaper way of getting your hands on that. Again, we'll have links and QR codes and everything at the convention itself. But he's also coming out with another thing shortly. I think it's a game design thing as well. S.T.A.L.K.E.R is coming out with another game design thing on the platform as well. And I'm very curious to see what comes next from him in terms of the actual gameplay as well, games that he'll be putting on the platform. 2 other things we don't have right now on the table in front of us, and both of them should be there. I think one of them for sure, one of them probably. But both from Chip Theory Games, we're going to have Too Many Bones Unbreakable, which technically I haven't played Unbreakable, but I've played enough Too Many Bones. I'm going to count it as a game I've played. I'm pretty sure I can pick it up quickly enough, hopefully, because I'll only be having the rules while I'm there. But Too Many Bones Unbreakable, the newest iteration of the Too Many Bones line, that's going to be showing up. It's going to be at the Origins booth at the Gamefound booth at Origins. We'll have Too Many Bones Unbreakable set up and ready for you to dive into it. If you've ever been hesitant to dive into Too Many Bones, if you never played the original, if you never played Undertow, or if you've played those and you just want to see what Unbreakable is all about, we'll have a table set up with the game ready to go for you to demo. Too Many Bones, one of my favorite games. It was my number 6 game of all time last year. Too Many Bones specifically as a genre, not specifically Unbreakable, but it's a fantastic game that I really think is the kind of experience that is worth seeing is for you. It's expensive. You don't always know if it's a game that you're going to like, which one of the nice things about having a booth like this, or conventions in general, is the ability to sit down and play games that are expensive, that are a commitment, and that you don't know if they are or aren't for you, and you get the opportunity to actually dive in and see if this is something you ultimately want to play. And so we'll have Too Many Bones Unbreakable there. We also should, and this is a caveat here, we should have 20 Strong. I've actually had the chance to play 20 Strong, really enjoyed that one, a strong solo game, so come with your... No one, come by yourself. There's no one to come with over here. Unless, I mean, you could bring a person along. Actually happens to be my first time playing 20 Strong. I played it with 3 players. It's a solo game that we three-headed took down just because a bunch of content creators in the room trying to manage limited copies. But 20 Strong, had a chance to play that one. Really enjoyed it. Highly recommend it. We should have it at the convention if everything works out timing-wise. So we should have it at the booth at Origins. But that's going to be a solo game set in the universes of Too Many Bones. Partially set in the universes because one of them is its own universe. We have the solo Sentinels, and then we also have the various other universes from, we have Hofflemarcus and Too Many Bones and all those things, and they'll be releasing more decks as well. They're going to have the various Tanglewood set from, oh my gosh, the artist's name. The artist who did Dice Throne, Manny Tremblay. Manny Tremblay is going to be doing the Tanglewood set along with Chip Theory Games, and I'm sure they'll be expanding their 20 Strong into their other universes, into Cloudspire, into Burn Cycle. I just imagine they would be. I imagine they'll be doing it for Elder Scrolls 2, although that's a licensing thing, so maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. But I do highly recommend 20 Strong if you have a chance to play it. From there, let's go ahead and dive into a giant... Well, let's do one more small box, then we'll do a giant box, then a bunch of other mid-sized boxes over here. We have Carson City over here. Carson City, which is currently on Gamefound as we speak over here, and by the time you show up at the show, it should probably be available for late pledge, or at the very least to follow and see when it late pledges and all that stuff. But Carson City is a fantastic game. It's a fantastic game that I've been talking about for a long time, and this is a 1-to-4 player. I mean, technically, the new version is a 1-to-4 player. I think this particular copy, it's going to be an older copy. This is not 1-to-4 player. I don't think so. It's a 2-to-4 player game, although I do recommend playing it with at least 3. I think if you can get 3 people, that's really going to be the ideal way to play it. It's a worker placement game that is competitive in nature, so you're both going through you're both playing the actual game. I don't know, I'm saying playing the actual game. It's a worker placement game which you can be placing workers down to gather plots of land, to take buildings, to try to get the various abilities in play, but you can fight with other players in the game. One of the fun things with the game is you can have these characters, you can have these guns you can get, and you're fighting with other players, and so I might want the same spot you go to, and just because you went there first, it doesn't matter. I can still go there and there will be a shootout, and if I made sure to go ahead and stock up on guns and ammo and all those fun things, and then I am more likely to win even though I went there second. And so that's a huge part of the game that I really think is a fascinating twist on the worker placement genre. I've enjoyed this game extensively ever since I first played it like 6-7 years ago, however long it was, but Carson City will have that set up for you to table. Then we're also going to have, and this is just the lid because it's otherwise a 35-pound box of goodness over here, but the Isofarian Guard will also be set up for you to dive into and get a sense of it. Now again, this is one where you will not be sitting down playing for 4 hours. You could easily sit down and play it for 4 hours, but we just don't want that happening. But this is a game you can play it solo or with 2 players. And I'll have to figure out exactly how I'm managing the demos of this, because when you first dive into Isofarian Guard, you actually manage it solo until eventually you get a second character. We'll probably have to get you set up to the point where you can skip directly past that so that at least 2 people can dive into this at a time. And there will be minimal spoilers. You'll be engaging with the world around you, but it'll be in the first early phases of the game, so there should be minimal spoilers. I don't know what we're doing about the audio. This is a huge foreteller integration as far as how much fun it is to dive into the Isofarian universe with foreteller. It's so much better. I guess you'll have the opportunity to have I have to figure it out. I have to figure out what we're doing as far as audio options, because it's not like we're going to blast audio across the room, so you may just have to read it. I have to figure out what I want to do here, because I want you to have the best experience, but the best experience means really I should just like set you up and put a pair of headphones on and just spend 10 minutes listening to the audio. This is a great game. It's a great game system with a bag building and narrative exploration and a good foreteller immersive journey that will really take you along for the ride. That's going to be the Isofarian Guard, which can now be loosely in the very top of the video. You can kind of see the box. We'll leave it there for now as we dive into the last games to go over. And to that end, we're going to have a bunch over here. Let's just start going through them one at a time. We have Keyforge Winds of Exchange. Now, I actually haven't played Winds of Exchange just yet, but I have played Keyforge in multiple other sets. I have played Keyforge and multiple other sets that they have, but we have Keyforge Winds of Exchange from Spiral Galaxy. Is it Spiral Galaxy or Ghost Galaxy? I think it's Ghost Galaxy. Spiral Galaxy is like a fulfillment center, if I recall correctly. Either way, Ghost Galaxy Gaming, Keyforge Winds of Exchange. This has a solo or competitive multiplayer scenario you can play through as you go through it, but the default game mode is a head-to-head competitive experience. We'll have a bunch of decks set up so players can sit down at a table, grab a few decks, and get a sense for what Keyforge is like. You're going to have a bunch of factions. I think we're up to like 8 houses by now. They might actually have pictures over here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 houses. There were 6 houses. There are now 7 houses to dive into. Winds of Exchange introduced a new house for you to play as, and ultimately you're going to have decks that are a combination of 3 houses, and they're AI-generated, not AI-generated, they're algorithmically generated decks that are completely asymmetric. No 2 decks out there are the same. I don't mean that with any sense of like, it's genuinely no 2 decks are the same. Every single deck of cards in existence of Keyforge Winds of Exchange is a unique deck that is completely different, and you can try to figure out, well, not completely different, but different to a large extent as far as the combination of houses and the factions and the card combinations you have in there. It's just a lot of math, but the math comes out to the fact that there are a lot of possible deck combinations and all being managed as far as the Keyforge Winds of Exchange system. So you find a deck, you start playing with another player, and you try to figure out how to take advantage of that deck, and maybe eventually over time you find your favorite decks. You start going head-to-head competitively in it. You'll have the opportunity to get a sense for what the gameplay is like as we go through it. That's going to be Keyforge Winds of Exchange, which brings us to the next game, which is going to be Skytear Horde. We're going to have Skytear Horde set up over here, and yes, we will have the playmat and deluxe tokens just because it's a better experience for you. But Skytear Horde is going to be a solo or cooperative game as you take down a variety of hordes and factions heading towards you. You'll pick the enemy faction you're facing off against. You'll pick the 2 decks you're playing as, or you can play a 2-handed solo, you can play a 1-handed solo, or you can play 2-handed cooperatively. We'll probably have it set up for 2 players cooperatively as we go through it. There is a head versus head mode, but I don't think we'll be showcasing that as much just because that is not the standard mode it's the less standard mode of the game, and I want to kind of teach people the more standard ways to play before you dive into the less standard ways of playing. Hopefully that all makes sense. But Skytear Horde, fantastic game. You can easily knock out a game in like 30 to 45 minutes too as you go through it. Lots of fun. We're going to have this one set up as well. Then we have Beast from Studio Midhall over here. I will have to brush up on the rules for this one because I have not played this since the prototype, but I have definitely played this one. Beast from Studio Midhall is going to be a hidden movement game that even works 1 versus 1, although probably I think it's better at 3 or 4 players particularly. But in this game, you're going to have a player playing as the Beast. You're going to have players playing as the Hunters. There's going to be a degree of drafting in the game. I love drafting. I love drafting so much. You're going to be drafting your actions, and you know that as you choose actions, you're not just choosing which action works for you, but you're choosing the actions that are going to be there for your opponent as you go through the game. And this one over here, a lot of fun. I think it's a fantastic experience in general, just in terms of the degree of hunting. I need to dive into it again. It's been again, I haven't played it since the prototype, which I'm really overdue to dive back into it. It's just so many games there's so many games to play. Okay, I have limited time. I have to sit down and play S.T.A.L.K.E.R and Scarface and Isofarian Guard and Castles of Burgundy and all these other games, and I have to dive into them, and then games show up that I already know I love. It's a hard life. I have lots and lots of complaints. Very, very hard life that we have here. But Beast will be set up over there. I do not believe we're going to have the new stuff. They're going to have a campaign over on Gamefound right now where you can, reprint and expansion. I think they're just going to have the old stuff. I don't think there's new stuff coming out there's new stuff coming out. I don't think there's going to be new stuff at Origins itself, but either so, you have the opportunity to dive into it and see if it's a game for you before you possibly see the new campaign coming up. And with that, we have 3 more boxes to go through. One of them I'm cheating a bit because I'm using the smaller box over here. We have Chronicles of Drunagor. This is just a smaller box over here. Age of Darkness, Spoils of War over here. This is going to be Chronicles of Drunagor. It's going to be the Chronicles of Drunagor system from Creative Game Studios as you try to manage this dungeon crawler of a game by moving your cubes onto the various actions you're going to take, by being mindful of the spreading darkness and taking down the enemies in a set of 3D terrain as you go through the various story, you go through the interaction points. A great system. I've had a lot of fun playing through this one. It's been a while because ever since they announced Apocalypse, I kind of just held off. I was like, you know what? I want to wait till they backwards compatible all the upgrades and story modes and all those things. I don't know if you can even still late pledge for this one, but I do know they have coming up. Dante's Inferno is going to be coming up in Gamefound, so you'll be able to follow those, check out what this game is like, and see if it's a game system for you. Again, I don't think you can actually still late pledge for this one. But if you can, you can, and if not, there's always Dante's Inferno, but you will have an opportunity to try this one. That's going to be Chronicles of Drunagor from CGS, which means we're down to 2 games, and we have Sleeping Gods over here. Sleeping Gods. Now, this particular version over here was not actually on Gamefound. We had Distant Skies on Gamefound. We had Sleeping Gods, Distant Skies over on the Gamefound platform. You can check that one out. But this is the original game because that's what we have right now. But they do have a lot of shared similarity as far as how these systems work. Just differences in terms of some of the changes they've made, some of the ways they've streamlined combat and given you slightly different changes to the giant sense of exploration you have in this game. Again, this is another one where you just won't be able to play it for 4 hours, but you will be able to sit down and get a sense for what it feels like to explore in this world, to manage your ship, to manage your resources, to manage your crew, and to assign your crew to different combats or fights or skill tests as you try to figure out how to navigate and survive in this world, while dealing with a large sense of narrative exploration in a world that remembers what you've done. As you wander from place to place, and as you encounter various people, and you make certain notes and gather certain cards that tell you that yes, you have visited the, you know, the mountains in the west, and you have found that ruby red flower that you can now give to that tribal woman, that you can come back to that location and engage with them. And suddenly that means when you go back to the other location, the tribesmen will now recognize you, and they will actually release their prisoner. It has a strong sense of exploration and narrative to it that works really well and gives it a ton of replayability. This is a game I've played, and I feel like I've only scratched the surface of what there is in Sleeping Gods, which means you will definitely only be able to scratch the surface, because there's a lot of gameplay in this. And that brings us to the final game. The final game is going to be Planet Unknown. This is going to be an easy and fun one to actually set up on table, by the way, because the nice part about Planet Unknown is that this is one that you can have 6 players playing it simultaneously in a game that's going to take you 60 minutes, even for a full 6-player experience, because of the asymmetric nature of play, the simultaneous nature of play, not asymmetric. Basically, you're going to have a lazy Susan in the game, in this polyomino game. You're going to have players taking a corporation and a planet, and you're going to have a lazy Susan in the middle, and the lazy Susan is going to set you up as far as, you know, being able to all take tiles simultaneously, so that even a 6-player game is not that much longer than a 2-player game or a 3-player game. It gets a bit longer because every round is always equal to the slowest player at the table, so more players doesn't mean there's going to drag a drop more, but you can still probably knock out a 6-player game of this in somewhere in the range of 60 minutes, possibly 90 minutes. It's a fast-moving game as you try to grab polyominoes, build out your planet, take advantage of your corporation's unique abilities, although I don't know, this is one of those fun things about trying to manage convention play, which is like, if you have players who know the game, then sure, we'll throw you in with the asymmetric corporations, but if you don't know the game, maybe the symmetric corporations are the best way to go to start you off. Either way, that's going to be Planet Unknown from Adam's Apple Games. Will be at Gamefound, ready for you to dive into. And with that, that is what we have as far as our games. 22 games, hopefully 22. We'll see if they all show up. At any given point, 15 of these should be set up on the table, ready to go, ready to play. And they will be games rotating in and out as we go through the experience. One thing I should note, I forgot to mention, in terms of that, the Witcher Old World all-in pledge that you're winning, it is going to be it's going to be the copy that is played at the convention. I should note that. That will be the copy there. That's the copy we have, but I figure it's still a fun prize, and I think that we're only going to have the base stuff set up, and so all the extras will be, you know, completely sealed. Probably, not a guarantee. But either way, we can figure out all that stuff out. But if you are going to Origins, stop by booth 1808. There's a lot of fun games to play. Come on, say hi. I should be there most of the time, not all the time. I'll be wandering around doing my own thing at times, but I'll be there for most of the convention as we go through it. And again, stop by, see what's going on, play a game or two, try to figure out how to win the Witcher Old World, or whatever it is. And if you're not going to Origins, it's worth considering. It's not that expensive a convention. Obviously, travel and lodging is usually the most expensive things, but even if you're close by, driving in for a day is not the craziest thing to do. They have day passes, an opportunity to dive into it. It's a fun convention. To me, it's my local convention. It's my backyard convention. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, and so for me, it's a 3-hour drive. It's the most manageable drive I have from any convention. It's gonna be a fun time. It always is a fun time. Highly recommend heading over there. But either way, these are the 22 games you'll be able to play-ish, probably, at the Gamefound booth at Origins 2023. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.